Skull! Whoa, 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 whoa. I'm back!
You'll never see it coming. You see that my mind is the best for eyes. You're done.
So, Paper Mario. Yeah, Paper Mario. There's been quite a bit of controversy around the series and with all the things going on with Color Splash, and I will admit the amount of preset hate was impressive for this one. That being said, we aren't covering one of those videos. I mean, there's a ton of those out there. No, what we're covering is from a user called Haedox, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that. Haedox is a game reviewer who I've seen pop up a few times in my recommended videos, and this video was suggested to me by my editor, Wave Runner. So, let's begin, shall we? Before we actually get into the video, I want to talk about the title of the video. Why Paper Mario The 1,000-Year Door Isn't As Perfect As You Think. I don't normally talk about titles, but Wave was actually kind of persistent on it. The big problem with this title is that it's sickeningly condescending. It's clearly trying to rile up a reaction by acting like it somehow knows better than the viewer. Hey, you know that game you really like and think is great? Let me tell you why your opinion is objectively wrong. Having the opinion that a game is overrated is perfectly fine, but assuming that all others are blind to the fact that it's overrated and is egotistical, plain and simple.
Others seem to take it a step further and glorify the predecessors as if they are some sacred entities that are without fault. Here, take a swab of superglue to your hands every time I say Color Splash, and every time I do, try to comment something. Anything. Your comment could be anything at all. Maybe why the 1,000-Year Door is the epitome of Paper Mario, and how it did wonders for the franchise. Join the other thousands of comments I see and say it. Ready? Comment with me now. The 1,000-Year Door is perfect! Alright, enough joking around. This assertion has bothered me for about a few months now.
You know, this is something I've wanted to address for quite a lot of time, and I'm sorry, Haedox, but this video kind of broke the griffin's back for me. The old type in the comment gag is something I see a lot of YouTubers do, and I have at least done it once myself for comedic effect. It's a gag, like with using cute animal pictures, it's a gag that has gone so overused that it's pretty much just a tumbleweed that tumbles across the internet. At best, if you're able to pull it off, it can be mildly amusing, but here, the presentation is rather off since your tone is boring and you don't do anything with the gag that hasn't been done before. Now to address the actual point and go, you say that there are thousands of comments that say that the 1,000-Year Door is perfect, when one, there is only one comment in your example saying that they like the 1,000-Year Door, not that it was perfect. Unless you can provide at least a few solid examples of people putting up the game on a perfect pedestal, then this is more of you building up a...
And my head I'd be scratching while my thoughts were busy hatching if I only had a brain.
Hell, even providing a review or something like that would be better, since it would actually reinforce and justify your stance on this. It still wouldn't be a good representation of people who like the game or how their opinions are on it, but it would still be something better than what you're doing right now.
And the reason why this bothers me is because it's just not true. No game on Earth is perfect, except for Garfield Kart.
Everyone behold, the newest Captain Obvious on the planet!
Do the Mario swing your arms.
So stating the 1,000-Year Door is perfect is plainly wrong. Not to mention, while the 1,000-Year Door is a damn good game, I'm not trying to say it's not, it certainly is not without its flaws. I'll say that once more, I really enjoy the 1,000-Year Door. Even though it's not my favorite Paper Mario, it deserves to be called great and looked upon as a great Paper Mario title. Should it be the standard for the entire series? I tend to disagree on that front.
When I looked up information on the game's reception, the reason why it's held up so much in regard in comparison to the other titles in the series is because it's the most well received. Going by public opinion, of course, but it is also notable because before we received Super Paper Mario, 1,000-Year Door didn't deviate from the formula that was established in the original title, and actually improved upon it with new graphics, different mechanics, and even tightened up the battle system from what I can understand. That's why it's held as a standard.
Making the same game over and over and over and over would get bland after a while, which is why I appreciate Paper Mario's efforts to experiment with the series and try new things.
I think you're taking the standard a bit too literally there, man. A standard would refer to more on the lines of mechanics, and frankly looking at the long-running series Pokemon, whose basic standard mechanics, and frankly story, for the most part, at the core haven't really changed. Of course, that'll change in a couple of weeks, but I digress. Turn-based fighting with colorful creatures, the games are still highly regarded. They are proof that you can use a very similar combat system and retain an audience appeal. Why? Because of the added features, characters, the story, and a number of other things such as team customization, which is also present in the 1,000-Year Door. So yeah, it can apply to the Paper Mario RPGs too. Having similar battle mechanics can work, and having a different story is always recommended. I mean, it's not like people are asking, oh, we want a copy of the Thousand Year Door storyline. That would be dull. I mean, if people ask for a copy of Star Fox 64 and... yeah, that wasn't too well received.
Sticker Star ultimately failed in trying something new, but I don't think Color Splash or Super Paper Mario did. See, those two games, which are arguably decent or fantastic, prove that Paper Mario can do something new and different from the Thousand Year Door while still having the quality to boot. I firmly believe that Sticker Star was the exception, misguided by some development choices that I'll get into in an upcoming video, and created this weird superiority complex that has shaped Thousand Year Door's legacy. And it's this idea that the Thousand Year Door is beyond criticism that irks me.
And my head I'd be scratching while my thoughts were busy hatching if I only had a brain.
Who the hell is saying it's beyond criticism? I've seen tons of forum posts and video reviews that point out flaws all the time for this game. How about showing the comments that you are going on about? Give me something other than hot air assumptions.
Which is why today we're going to be looking at all the flaws I could find in this beloved classic. What negative fun! One of the most glaring issues this game has is the backtracking, which is only exacerbated by a bare bones fast travel system. Like before Chapter 4, you have to go back to Rougeport, talk to a non-essential NPC, and then go back to Twilight Town. These bits where you have to return to Rougeport always bothered me. They were always more annoyances than chances for competent character and plot development. Plus, Rougeport isn't that great of a hub area. Putting aside the spectacular music, especially that intro, it always seemed to be the location of filler only. Like those times when the story requires you to go to Rougeport for some information on where to go next, which makes Rougeport a less exciting part of the game as a result. There are shops, minigames, and the lottery here, not to mention the interesting atmosphere, but the tedious visits to do some simple errands are dumb. I mean, I didn't even bother to tour the buildings unless I was required by the story to.
Did you even read any of the dialogue while you were forced to backtrack around the town? You didn't really pay attention to any of the dull NPCs telling you about the gang wars that are happening throughout the background of the game. Has it occurred to you that the music and atmosphere of the city alone is a reason why so many people adore it? Haedox does not seem to understand that having a few flaws is not a valid reason to completely dismiss any admiration for it. This is a big problem throughout the video. He is astounded that people are able to look past small problems and enjoy the game as a whole. You know, that's something that people tend to do. In addition, the story is reserved for the respective chapters usually, and this hub world is filled with quite a lot more than you let on. There are the sewers with all its secrets that you casually show but don't talk about. It had many secret items, but also optional nuggets for the player to enjoy. The Trouble Center, the NPCs above that I've mentioned, and the NPCs that are on the houses tell you about the history of Rogueport. The shops, the minigames, the Pit of 100 Trials, all optional, yes, so you can choose to go out of your way or not. It's up to the player.
Because I always had what I needed by exploring and shopping in the areas where the current chapter was taking place. The only instances where I went to Rougeport on my own accords were to check the Trouble Center for side quests, which are flawed in themselves, as most have a subpar reward which isn't even mentioned until you complete the side quest. Yes, when I was younger, I did the Pit of 100 Trials and all I got was a fucking healing item.
Even though if you actually continued playing the damn 100 Trials, you would actually get more useful items, such as the sack that can double your amount of inventory. You know, this is making me feel like you haven't actually played the game in recent time, or even bothered trying to complete the 100 Trials, so... yeah. I mean, I don't even see like a healing item here. At most, I see basically just some rare badges. The most I see here is just a couple of random badges that could be possibly rare, and the most that I see that you're referring to would be the Pity Flower when it comes to healing, but I'm not sure what you're referring to. You gotta be a little bit more specific. Otherwise, you know, just showing this little screenshot right here kind of proves that you really didn't do that much in the actual 100 Trials.
What would have been better is if something important actually happened in Rougeport, or maybe the town changes as Mario's adventure progresses. Perhaps the collection of stars is somehow improving the town. It would have been really neat, since you go there so often, to see it physically change, more so than it already does. That would add to the player's sense of accomplishment, while also making the returning visits to Rougeport that much more intriguing.
I agree there aren't a whole lot of changes throughout the game in Rogueport. There are plotlines to follow, such as the gang conflicts in Luigi's Adventure, as well as more areas to explore thanks to the new partners and abilities that you get. You do actually see positive effects from collecting the crystal stars after each chapter in the locations that said chapter takes place in. For example, the Koopas eaten by Hooktail being set free, or the former boss Cortez appearing as a friendly NPC who helps you travel back to Keyhole Island. The side quests you criticized before further exemplify the effect of Mario's quest has had on the world, by allowing you to check back on NPCs that have benefited from your actions.
Adding to this idea of filler content is that a lot of the missions in the Thousand Year Door feel simply like errands, monotonous chores. Some of the chapters felt like they were just going through the motions until you ended that particular chapter.
Are you saying that the game actually had a goal where you were trying to reach at the end of each chapter? How preposterous!
Of course, Chapter 4 is the most infamous blunder of them all. It requires you to fix Twilight Town's curse of being turned into pigs, and in order to do so, you have to make your way through the creepy steeple and confront Dupless, who has been impersonating Mario. What makes this chapter a slog to play is the abundance of pointless backtracking and cryptic puzzles. At one point, you have to hide with Vivian by a bunch of birds. There's very little and vague indication that this is what you're supposed to do.
We need to figure out what the real name of the ghost is. And it sounds like the birds know what to do.
Do the Mario swing!
Haedox, either you're lying to your audience, I have to call you blind, or you didn't even play this chapter. Vivian tells you straight up to do this!
Also, at the beginning, you have to walk around and wait until the gatekeeper becomes a pig, which, again, is never mentioned. Not only that, but fighting the enemies in Mist is very, very annoying.
You wanna know something? Fighting enemies in the mist is annoying. Good thing you've got companions that can actually fix that. Flurry and Bobbery can actually fix that for you, though we'll get to the partners later. Not only that, you can use Mist on your own status effect. Stop nitpicking!
General White's side quest is another mission I despise due to the dull backtracking you had to do. Talking to NPCs around the world just to find this one Babam seemed like lazy padding in my opinion. He shows up at his house in the end of a cutscene and all of that was seemingly pointless.
While finding General White is regarded as one of the most infamously tedious quests in the game, it does have a purpose. That purpose is adding some humor to the game before a generally serious chapter. Whether you found it funny or not is irrelevant. The point is that it served its purpose and acted like a big final obstacle before the game's penultimate chapter, also allowing you to see everything you've accomplished up to that point. Really, it depends on the player's perspective on this matter.
Backtracking isn't inherently bad, but when you do so much of it in an RPG that boasts unique locations and a distinct yet challenging combat system, it's not hard to see why it's the weakest element of the package. Furthering that, it can destroy the pacing of an RPG. I hate being taken out of the flow of story events to do pointless backtracking, and unfortunately, you do a lot of that in the Thousand Year Door.
Hey, I know that quest. That's the Ultra Rank quest. You know, the completely optional one that Merlon won't even tell you about unless you go talk to him? Heck, you can even completely ignore it and go on your merry way to complete the story. Seems kind of out of sync with your examples of backtracking when you could use a completely optional quest to say that backtracking is bad. Now, granted, this is something to consider if you're a completionist, but it's still something that the player can avoid if they're not interested in the side quests.
See, I'm sure a lot of people would probably rope the Peach aspects of the Thousand Year Door here too, but honestly, I like them. They add important details to the narrative and are entertaining in their own right, even if they are technically just rehashed Twink segments.
There you go again, Haedox, making assumptions about what you think Paper Mario fans like and don't like. Does that straw man you are creating only have the exact opposite opinions of you? Well, I like the Peach segment, so obviously everyone else must hate them. From what I've seen in my own research on forum posts, Reddit, and that kind of thing, they are considered generally some of the most dark and memorable story moments of the entire game. Also, calling those rehashed Twink segments is a bit of an insult to said dark and memorable story moments. While they do have a similar flow to the Twink segments gameplay-wise, and the Twink segments did have a couple hilarious and heartwarming moments, it pales in comparison to where the TEC storyline goes. Heck, it starts out with Peach taking a shower and gaining the interest of a computer program. Creepy. Who would have thought something like this would have been in a Mario game? And an E-rated one, too!
What? Oh, wait, I'm being too positive? Alright, I'll calm down. Back to the negatives.
Arceus forbid you objectively review this game instead of nitpicking problems just so you can stand against the grain. Now, I get that your video is to talk about the negatives, I realize that, but a lot of what you're doing is making the issues a lot bigger than what they really are. You're purposely leaving information out, and you're making a lot of assumptions on the straw man you're crafting very well.
Numerous fans often cite the partners in the Thousand Year Door as being one of the best and classic parts of the Paper Mario formula, something Sticker Star, Color Splash, and Super Paper Mario did away with. Sure, these characters are filled with, well, character as opposed to the pixels and toads in the later games. However, what all but two are not filled with is usefulness. The only two partners I used for the majority of the Thousand Year Door were Yoshi and Vivian. I'd use Yoshi to travel across the overworld faster and Vivian in combat due to her powerful burning attacks and ability to make the team disappear from attacks. Unless the overworld required it with some certain field command, I'd never switch from Yoshi. And unless I didn't have Vivian or needed some aspect of another character, like identifying enemies with Goombella for the sake of completion, I'd never switch from Vivian. As far as attacking goes, Goombella can't do much, Koops can't attack flying enemies, which limits his performance in combat, Flurry is close to being useless, Yoshi is really only good on the field, Miss Mouse doesn't serve much of a purpose, and Admiral Bobbery is simply okay. Anything those partners can do, Vivian can do better in almost all situations, like with spikes, flames, defense, or flying statuses. The fact that this much inequality exists in the partner system is a problem, because it'd be cool to use all these partners in battles without feeling as if they'd only need to be used in gimmicky situations. Of course, I could have used other partners, but what's the point when Vivian does the job so well? And no, I don't mean the game should take away Vivian like it does in Chapter 4 when you can't use any of your partners. What a terrible chapter.
Oh boy. While Vivian excels at being versatile and able to be decent in most situations, that doesn't mean the other partners aren't capable of being equal or even sometimes more useful at combating enemies. Let's go through each partner in the order you get them. Goombella might seem like a pretty useless partner who's only good for her tattle at first, but the later abilities she can unlock with Super and Ultra Rank can make her an amazing asset. Her multi-bonk attack functions like Mario's Power Bounce, meaning she can theoretically bonk an enemy forever, or at least until she misses with an action command, making her capable of doing much more damage to a single enemy than Vivian could ever hope for. Her Rally Wink also allows Mario to attack again in a turn, leading to some interesting strategies as well as having Mario charge up and attack in the same turn. Next we have Koops. While he can only attack ground enemies, yes, it is something that he excels greatly at. He can attack all enemies on the ground with his Power Shell for half the price of Vivian's Fire Jinx, or for the same price of a more powerful Shell Slam. The fact that he's in a shell makes him immune to spiked enemies, and multi-hitting attacks can also affect the fire-resistant enemies that are abundant in Keyhole Island, who Vivian would be unable to harm. Then we have Flurry, who is, well, basically useless for most of the game, but she does have her uses. In addition to the dodgy fog I mentioned before, her Gale Force attack can make the Magnus Von Grapple Fight 2.0 much easier fight. In addition, her abilities are easier to control. Baby Yoshi also works well in combat past his transportation abilities, and is arguably even more versatile than Vivian in ways that he can attack enemies. His ground pound is easy to take out lower health enemies and knock flyers out of the sky in addition to knocking over Koopas, something Vivian can't do. His Gulp ability is able to ignore defenses, allowing him to take on annoying enemies like Clefs with ease. His mini eggs, in addition to decreasing the attack power of enemies, is just also useful on its own, can let Baby Yoshi hit enemies who are hiding on the ceiling. Finally, his Stampede attack is a fully charged ground pound on all ground enemies minus the stomping effect. So theoretically, Baby Yoshi is capable of handling every type of enemy in the game, a feat Vivian can't even boast to do. Speaking of Vivian, while she is versatile, she does have quite a few major flaws. Her primary attack, Shade Fist, is useless against spiked enemies such as the spiked Clefs or Piranha Plants, as she will only be hurt. Veil does guard against any and all attacks, but is only really reliable against telegraphed attacks, and not in most normal situations, since it only takes away a precious turn Mario could have used to heal or attack in. The Fiery Jinx attack does not work against fire-resistant enemies like the Clefs, and in fact will heal fire enemies, such as the abundant Wisps in Keyhole Island. Plus, her Infatuate is too inconsistent to be reliable. Admiral Bobbery is capable of doing even more damage than Vivian to a single enemy without the downside of being affected by spikes. His Bomb Squad is a cheaper alternative to the Fiery Jinx that is capable of doing even more damage. Hold Fast is even more reliable defensive move than Veil, since you will know it'll always defend against, and even damage it from physical attacking enemies without stealing Mario's turn. Finally, Miss Meows, who you said serves no purpose, does actually serve an important purpose for completion, beyond acquiring all the partners. She can steal badges that can only be retrieved from the enemies. In addition, her Love Slap ignores defenses, making her useful against very tanky enemies, or ground enemies in general. Her Tease is a more reliable status move than Vivian's Infatuate, and a cheaper one at that. Finally, her Smooch can serve as a nice emergency heal, saving Mario's life in more situations than Veil could ever hope to do so. And that's not even getting to the crazy things that partners can do with badges, such as allowing them to charge up or flipping their attack set at the cost of defense. With some experimenting, you can quickly find out the other party members are not as useful as you make them out to be. Sorry for the rug lamb. My editor was really irked at this part. I'm gonna go faint now.
As you can see, Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door is fairly flawed. Any more negative critique and I'd be nitpicking at this point.
You already have nitpicked. Remember the mist?
Not only that, but fighting the enemies in Mist is very, very annoying.
Wait, I'm getting deja vu.
It might not seem like it from the very existence of this video, but I love TTYD. You know you love something when you're able to pick it apart piece by piece while still acknowledging that you enjoy it, like Garfield Car. I just wish people would stop glorifying this game as if it's the golden standard of Paper Mario games. Want to hear something even more crazy? The Thousand Year Door wasn't even the first Paper Mario game. What? You mean to tell me that Paper Mario 64 had already established the elements of the partner system, charismatic dialogue, the rhythmic combat system, music, feel, environments of paper, and so much more?
Oh yeah! And here I was missing the condescending attitude. Thanks for the quick fill-up.
This only further shows how over-exaggerated the praise of the Thousand Year Door is. The Thousand Year Door is a sequel to Paper Mario 64, and a wonderful one at that. That being said, however, this installment did not reinvent the genre, and it didn't innovate or stray away from how Paper Mario 64 was structured.
Oh really? How about turning the paper aesthetics into a part of the actual gameplay? Because throughout the Thousand Year Door, Mario will get cursed and gains the ability to fold into stuff like the paper airplane. You know, something that was only slightly hinted at in the original game, but didn't actually have anything to do with the gameplay. Or how about the audience? You know, allowing you not only have players feel like they're being pumped up, but also serves to receive bonuses and other advantages based on the crowd's reaction and size. No innovation, my bony haunches!
If we're going to praise any Paper Mario game for setting the stage for the future of the series, shouldn't it be the original Paper Mario 64? Regardless, I still do believe Nintendo should take one more crack at the Paper Mario RPG formula established in Paper Mario 64. The Thousand Year Door has a lot of missed potential with regard to the broken combat systems.
Broken combat system? What? No joke, this is the first time you've bring this up, and how is it broken? You never once touched on the battle system of the game throughout the entire video. Now you're just tacking it on? The only reason why I think you're mentioning this is because of the partner system, but as I already have a collapsed lung from me explaining that you don't know what you're talking about in regards to that, I have no idea where this is coming from, and it feels like you just tacked on this complaint. Explain. That's what your video is here for. Don't just say it as if it's a fact without doing so.
Static Rouge port and the monotony of how the game is structured, and I feel like Nintendo could greatly improve on its shortcomings if they gave it another go. That being said, as long as a Paper Mario game is fun, I don't see the issue with reinventing it. Color Splash is currently impressive despite it not being the ideal My Paper Mario. Man, I wish people would stop being crybabies about Paper Mario and get off the high horse that the Thousand Year Door is perfect and every Paper Mario game needs to be exactly like it to be good. Fuck that. Being more open-minded is a much better time. Oh wait, if I was like that, how would I garner clicks and attention for jumping on a knee-jerk bandwagon of hating anything new? How would I get my YouTube coin?
By misrepresenting a game that is beloved and treated with well regard, hating on something that's popular does tend to net attention towards videos, and I think I'll skip it here, as he only promotes himself, but apparently another guy who wrote the script for his video. Wait.
Thanks to Silver Author on Twitter for the help with the script. Go
Two people wrote this? And with all the mistakes and cherry picking? Did neither one of you even bother attempt a fact check? Whatever, the video's done, and now it's time for my final thoughts. You mentioned that if you like a game, you should be able to pick it apart, but don't forget the reasons why you actually like the game in the first place, and especially the reasons why other people love the game. You're more than welcome to say that A Thousand Year Door isn't your favorite game of the series, that's fine. But you act like people believe that it's a perfect game when some of the criticisms you brought up, for example, the backtracking, were criticisms that are years old and made by said fans of the game. And a lot of what you brought up comes down to 1. Not paying attention to the game like in the case of your complaint with the crows, and 2. Not bothering to actually try different things in the game, as in the case with the partner system. I agree there are shortcomings with the game, but you have to consider the reason why people might consider it a standard for the franchise could be because the positives of the game outweigh the negatives. And as you stated earlier, it was based on Paper Mario 64, which was another turn-based RPG, with 2 games having a formula that was similar. No duh, people will be expecting another game when the franchise would have a similar combat system. You even say yourself you want to see that! Look, you are entitled to have your opinions. I'm not trying to argue that. But this comes off as trying hard to have different opinions just to the sake of standing out. And if your gripes with the games were just opinions, then I certainly would respect that. However, you made certain claims and statements about the game that weren't even true, or slightly misleading to your audience, and made me question if you even did play the game, or at the very least played the game recently to make sure your points are actually correct. When you try to be objective like this, it comes off as biting yourself in the foot when these kinds of things show up. I want to see you improve, I actually do. I like your content for the most part. This video just seemed like a bleh. Anyway, I'm Kamen, and remember to examine your fandom.